Okay, not a ton of supplementary information on this PowerPoint, guys. I kept it short for a reason. We're not gonna go into a ton of depth on the neural control in this unit. So basically, just a couple slides here. We're going to talk about the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. So starting on the left, the sympathetic nervous system is your fight or flight system. I'm sure most of you are familiar with that phrase. This is going to be something that happens, for example, in our line of work. If you're working in a hospital, you can think of like your traumas being affected by this. But in real life, this is something that takes effect if you're running from something, and people will describe this in situations where they're in car accidents or animal attacks or all kinds of things like in that stress-inducing type things. What's interesting though is your body can't really discern what stress is like a bear attack versus the stress of, let's say, a job interview or test taking anxiety. So you have like this response for a lot of different things that you are encountering that are eliciting kind of like stress from your body, obviously to varying degrees. But it's interesting, like some people will describe this when they have stage fright or giving a speech, these kinds of effects. So what happens is your sympathetic nervous system will release adrenaline, epinephrine, catecholamines, positive chronotropes, basically, and that just means things that increase your heart rate. You have these beta-1 receptors on your heart muscle. They're going to respond to these hormones. It's going to increase your heart rate and increase the force of contraction. We talked about those 3 factors that affect stroke volume, so preload, contractility, and afterload. So if you increase that force of contraction, you're going to increase your stroke volume. So this is going to increase your cardiac output and help your body be really geared up and ready to run, geared up and ready to go. So that's the goal here, is really increasing that cardiac output. Your parasympathetic nervous system is your rest and digest system. So this is going to be what you do kind of in your relaxation mode. The hormone associated with that is acetylcholine. This is a negative chronotrope, so slowing down that heart rate. One of the ways, like I don't know if it's a mnemonic device exactly, but that this was always taught to me in A&P was that you parachute into vagus to rest and digest. So parasympathetic nervous system, it travels down the vagus nerve. It's to rest and digest. So you parachute into vagus to rest and digest. But basically, this acetylcholine, this negative chronotrope, is going to slow down the heart rate, slow down the force of contraction, or decrease the force of contraction. So you're going to decrease your cardiac output. So this is really the opposite of the sympathetic nervous system. This is just how you're going to rest and relax. That's really all you need to know, succinctly put on one slide. So that's it for that. One of the things that I wanted to point out, we know that cardiac output is heart rate times stroke volume. So if you increase your heart rate, you are going to increase your cardiac output. That is only effective to a certain point. If you get to a heart rate of about 200, around there, you actually start to decrease your cardiac output, or at the very least, your cardiac output stays the same. Why? So you have 2 phases of your heart. You have your systolic portion where that heart is contracting, and then you have your diastolic portion where it's resting and relaxing and filling. If your heart rate gets to around 200 or greater, what ends up happening is your heart doesn't stay in the filling side of things long enough. It doesn't stay relaxed long enough to properly fill. So what it does is it negatively impacts your preload. You don't get enough blood for your heart to work with. I talked about this in another lecture when we talked about CPR and making sure that you really allow that chest to recoil so that heart can fill. So you can increase your heart rate to increase your cardiac output. That is definitely true. When you get really high, though, you have to start considering if you're eliminating that filling time. So just a little quick blurb there about that. That's it. These are your questions. That's all I got for this lecture.